Board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Troop, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Triplett, Alderwoman Young, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Villa, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderman Wessels, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Florida, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderman Schmid, Alderman French, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvie, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, President Reed,
Here.
Alderwoman Flowers, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Triplett, Alderman Conway, Alderman Vollmer, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, 20 present.
Quorum being present, I ask everyone in the chambers and the galleries who's able to stand to please rise for prayer. Giving all honor to God, Almighty God, source of all authority, we humbly ask guidance in our deliberations and wisdom in our conclusions. Amen. We would dispense with line item 3, introduction of honored guests. Any introduction of honored guests? Any introduction of honored guests? Alderman from 24th.
My guest this morning, Celeste Reeder with St. Louis Realtors Association.
Any further? Alderman from the 22nd.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have my honored guest, Rachel Smith, from the Circuit Attorney's Office.
Alderman from the 27th.
Thank you, Mr. President. As my special guest, I would like to have Demetrius Alford of Local 73 Firefighters.
All right, thanks. Alderman from the 14th.
Good morning. I'd like to introduce Gary Otten from Painters District Council number 2, and Wendell Harris, who's new, and he's the Director of New Business Development.
Alderman from the 26th.
Thank you, Mr. President. My honored guest today will be the former Comptroller, Very Jones. Thank you.
Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. My special guest today is the Ameren UE family, AT&T, Dale Rousat, and also my very special guest is Alderman Antonio French. Thank you.
There you go. Alderman from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have for my honored guest today, Ronnie Auer.
Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from 13, you recognize on approval of the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to approve the minutes of the April 27th meeting.
Moved by the Alderman 13th, seconded by the Alderman from 12th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in sections A, B, and C of the agenda and have been placed in all aldermen's mailboxes. I have from His Honor the Mayor the following correspondence. Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individual for appointment to the St. Louis Convention Center Hotel Community Improvement District. The appointment of Dale Rousat, who resides at 1015 Locust, replacing Paul Meyer, whose term will expire on February 15, 2013. I respectfully request your approval of this appointment. Sincerely, Francis G. Slay, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Alderwoman from the 7th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the St. Louis Convention Center Hotel Community Improvement District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I'd move for approval of the mayor's appointment of Dale Roussettes to this board.
It's moved by the Alderman from the 7th. I entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 15th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment to the Clean Energy Development Board, the PACE Board. Appointment of Christopher Proctor, who resides at 5407 Malentz, and whose term will expire on May the 11th, 2016. The appointment of Ms. Shelby Watson, who resides at 1136 Washington, and whose term will expire on May the 11th, 2016. The appointment of Patrick Justice, who resides at 4037 Magnolia, and whose term will expire on May the 11th, 2015. The appointment of James Young, who resides at 905 Lamai, and whose term will expire on May the 11th, 2015. The appointment of Patrick Bannister, who resides at 6708 Marquette, and whose term will expire on May the 11th, 2016. I respectfully request your approval of these appointments. Sincerely, Francis G. Slay, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Alderwoman from the 28th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Clean Energy Development Board.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. At the request of the chairman of Parks and Environmental Matters, I'd like to move to appoint the aforementioned members to the Clean Energy Development Board.
Moved by the Alderman from the 28th, seconded by the Alderman from the 20th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for reappointment to the Residence Inn Downtown St. Louis Community Improvement District. The reappointment of Robert Suela, who resides at 309 North Van Buren Avenue, whose term will expire on March the 8th, 2015. The reappointment of Michael Manna, who resides at 1507 Oriole, and whose term will expire on March the 8th, 2015. The reappointment of Douglas Mullinex, who resides at 27 Berkeley Lane, and whose term will expire on March the 8th, 2015. I respectfully request your approval of these appointments. Sincerely, Francis G. Slay, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 21st, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Residence Inn Downtown St. Louis Community Improvement District.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Alderwoman from the 6th, I move that we approve the appointments.
Moved by the Alderman from the 21st, seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for reappointment to the Great Rivers Greenway District. The reappointment of Mr. Neil Perryman, who resides at 6735 Westway, and whose term will expire on January the 1st, 2014. The reappointment of Ms. Alberta Dillard, who resides at 4773 Hammett Place, and whose term will expire on January the 1st, 2015. I respectfully request your approval of these appointments. Sincerely, Francis G. Slay, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 28th, you recognize on the mayor's appointments to the Great River Greenway District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Also, at the request of the chairman of Parks and Environmental Matters, I move to appoint Neil Perryman and Alberta Dillard to the Great Rivers Greenway District.
Moved by the Alderman from the 28th. I entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 12th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Was there some discussion on that one?
Discussion.
Okay. Well, I'm in the middle of the vote now, so I have to finish it. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman from the 20.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise just to comment on the board members of Great Rivers Greenway, not in opposition to these two, but I've noticed lately that some of them have been advocating for a tax increase. We know there's a bill coming at us probably, if the governor signs it, that would expand or increase the sales tax levy that would then go to Great Rivers Greenway. And my comment is just that I think in general, the board members are there to implement policy. It's the policy of Great Rivers Greenway to build, an interconnected network of bike paths, which I am completely in favor of. I've called it my favorite sales tax. But I do think there's an issue when you have folks who I think should be implementing policy who are then advocating to increase what they're getting. And so I hope that in the future, the board members will just will confine themselves to being watchdogs, make sure we're spending the money that we're giving them responsibly, but not out there pushing for additional sales tax. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Alderman.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for reappointment to the St. Louis Mental Health Fund Board of Trustees. The reappointment of Philip Menden, who resides at 1053 South Taylor, whose term will expire on December the 31st, 2014. The reappointment of Ms. Nina North Murphy, who resides at 3447 Pestalozzi, whose term will expire on December the 31st, 2014. The reappointment of Stephen Doss, who resides at 6217 Rhodes, and whose term will expire on December 31st, 2014. The reappointment of Roy Wilson, who resides at 1010 St. Charles Street, and whose term will expire on December the 31st, 2014. The reappointment of Mary Calzaretta, who resides at 4125 Holly Hills, and whose term will expire on December the 31st, 2014. The reappointment of Carolyn Corbett, who resides at 42 Westmoreland, and whose term will expire on December the 31st, 2014. The reappointment of Robert Franken, who resides at 5290 Waterman, whose term will expire on December the 31st, 2014. The reappointment of Marquette Grandelos, who resides at 5121 Washington, and whose term will expire on December the 31st, 2014. The reappointment of Dr. Leon Ashford, who resides at 5134 Ashland, and whose term will expire on December the 31st, 2013. I respectfully request your approval of these appointments. Sincerely, Francis G. Slay, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 8th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the St. Louis Mental Health Fund Board.
Good morning, Mr. President and members of the board, and happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers here in the region and here at the Board of Aldermen. We do appreciate what you do. And I would move at this point in time to approve the appointments to the Mental Health Board.
Moved by the Alderman from the 8th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 25th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carried.
That's the extent of report of city officials.
Dispense with line items 7 through 10, first reading of board bills.
Board Bill 48, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission to change the zoning of property from F Neighborhood Commercial District to C Multiple Family Dwelling District in City Block 1971 for property on Indiana containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 49, sponsored by Alderman Villa, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission to change the zoning of property from the K Unrestricted District and both the K Unrestricted District and the J Industrial District to the J Industrial District only in city blocks for properties on Catlin, Broadway, and East Catlin, containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 50, sponsored by Alderman Bosley, and ordinance recommended by the Parking Commission to take Commission making appropriation for payment of the operating expenses, capital improvement, and improvement expenses involving Parking Division assets and debt service expenses of the Parking Division of the Treasurer's Office, Kiel, Argyle, Shoto, Williams Papers, Central Downtown, Buckingham, Couples, and Justice Parking Facilities, amounting in the aggregate to the sum of $14,027,042 and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 51, sponsored by Alderman Cone, and ordinance amending ordinance 64592 by modifying the terms of the real estate tax abatement for the 3952 through 58 South Grand and the Gravois South Grand Merrimack redevelopment area. That's the extent of first readings.
Reference to committee.
Following board bill was reported to the Streets Committee. Board Bill 50, And to the Housing Committee, Board Bills 48, 49, and 51. That's the extent of reference to committees.
Second reading.
Following board bills were reported out of the Public Safety Committee. Board Bill number 3, sponsored by Alderman Bosley, and ordinance repealing ordinance 69094 pertaining to the issuance of any package or drink liquor licenses for premises within the boundaries of the 3rd Ward Liquor Control District containing an emergency clause. Board Bill number 4, committee substitute, sponsored by Alderwoman Cruzen, and ordinance prohibiting the issuance of any 3 a.m. closing permits for any currently non-licensed premises within the 28th Ward Liquor Control District containing an emergency clause. Board Bill number 35, sponsored by Alderwoman Howard, Alderman Boyd, and Kennedy, and ordinance pertaining to the Preservation Review Districts, amending ordinance 64832 and 66609. Board Bill 42, sponsored by Alderman Carter, and ordinance pertaining to a citywide housing conservation program containing a penalty clause and a severability clause. The following board bills were reported out of the Housing Committee. Board Bill number 6, committee substitute, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, and ordinance pertaining to special use districts, establishing the Kosciuszko Business and Industrial Area Special Use District, providing definitions and findings pertaining to said district. Board Bill number 7, committee substitute, sponsored by Alderman Ogilvy, and ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission to change the zoning of property from A single-family dwelling district to both A single-family dwelling district and D multiple-family dwelling district, and F neighborhood commercial district to the H area commercial district in multiple city blocks on Berthold, Graham, Clayton, Berthold, and Oakland, containing an emergency clause. Board Bill number 8, Board Bill number 8, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, and ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission to change the zoning of property from both D multiple family dwelling district and F neighborhood commercial district to F neighborhood commercial district only, all 3 D multiple family dwelling districts, and F neighborhood commercial district, and J industrial commercial district, and J industrial commercial district only to either D multiple family dwelling district, the F neighborhood commercial district, or the G local commercial and office district only in city blocks 680, 670, 680, 780, 781, 782, 783, 787, 788, 790, 791, 798, 806, 809, 842, and 843, and containing an emergency clause. That's the extent of our second reading.
We dispense with line item 14, perfection consent.
Board Bill 25, sponsored by Alderwoman Cruzen and President Reed, an ordinance to provide for the borrowing of funds in anticipation of the collection of tax payments levied by the city for deposit in its general revenue fund, containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 29, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance authorizing and directing the Director of the Department of Human Services via the St. Louis Area On Agency to accept a grant award from the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services in the amount of $70,000, containing an emergency clause. Board Bill number 30, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor to submit all necessary applications and to enter into agreements with the St. Louis Effort for AIDS for the AIDS United Access to Care Social Innovation Fund, containing an emergency clause. That's the extent of perfection consent.
Alderman from the 13th, you recognize on the motion for the perfection consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for perfection of the aforementioned bills on the consent calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 13th, seconded by the Alderman from the 11th, for real this time. Any discussion? Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carried. Board bills for perfection.
Board Bill number 14, sponsored by President Reed.
We're gonna move board bills 14 through 16 to the informal calendar.
So noted. That's the extent of board bills for perfection.
Dispense with line items 17 through 22. Miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Tuesday, Ways and Means Committee meeting starting at 9 a.m. in the Leisure Room. See attached schedule. Wednesday, Ways and Means Committee meeting, 9 a.m. in the Leisure Room. See attached schedule. Thursday, Ways and Means Committee meeting, 9 a.m. in the Leisure Room. Please see attached schedule. Also on Thursday, Transportation and Commerce meeting, 1 p.m. in the Leisure Room. Friday, full board meeting, 10 a.m. in the chambers. That's the extent of my announcements.
Any further announcements? Any further? Alderman from 20th.
Mr. President, members of the board, for those bike enthusiasts and families who have bicycles, this Saturday, tomorrow, at 10 a.m., there's going to be a bike blessing at St. Anthony Church on Merrimack Street. You can also go starting around 7:30 a.m. until 10 a.m. There's going to be a family bike ride that starts at 8:30. You can meet up at Virginia and Merrimack Street. Then the next day on Sunday, there will be a bike criterium, which is a bike race around Marquette Park. So you can take a look at that on the internet. It's actually the Tour de Grove. Tour de Grove is the big race over in the Grove. This is in the Dutchtown neighborhood. Thank you.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've got 2 school fundraisers going on tomorrow, Saturday. Mason School on Southwest Avenue is having a 5K run and a 1-mile walk to raise money for the school. That starts at 9 a.m. tomorrow. And then St. James the Greater School is having their annual auction and dinner and silent auction tomorrow evening. So two good events to support students in the neighborhood tomorrow. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from 13, recognized on the motion to excuse.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to excuse the alderman from the 2nd, 6th, 10th, and 16th wards due to necessary absence.
Moved by the Alderman from 13th, seconded by the Alderman from 27th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman from 13, recognized on the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adjourn the meeting until Friday, 10 a.m., May 18th.
Moved by the Alderman from 13th, seconded by the Alderman from 25th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned.